Hey, good morning, Georgia. Welcome to Community Focus. Faith, you're at the office. I'm in Jackson County. Our guests are out in Oglethorpe County, Lexington, Georgia. We're going to learn a little bit about that today. Faith, you ever gone from Athens, kind of heading out 78 to Washington? You ever gone that way?
Yeah, sure have. We actually, for years and years, I did horse camps with your daughter every summer. And I believe we did a horse camp every year for a few years in Oglethorpe County.
Yeah, bedroom community of Athens, Georgia. I lived in Winterville. That's where I had that solar thermal there when I first got elected. And so going through Oglethorpe was a pretty common place for me. We've got some great guests today. We'll just say hello to them, and then we'll start with Mike Russell. Dink, it's always good to see you again. You have multiple places you lay your head down at night, but the Oglethorpe is one of them, right?
That's right. Tell people I'm not from here, but we got here as fast as I could.
And then Michael Perna. Michael, we're going to be talking about the solar that he has selling back to Georgia Power. Michael, good to see you today.
Good morning, Commissioner.
And we'll start with Mike Russell. Mike, you and I connected some years ago. You were trying to get a better situation for your solar, and I think your array maybe had been oversized, and you were pushing some back on the grid. Let me just start first, because I don't want to be a Debbie Downer here and talk too negatively about this. But has your overall experience with solar there in Lexington and Oglethorpe County been good?
Oh, definitely. Yeah. So, as you know, we initially pushed back because it was a bit of a surprise, really. Because when I read all the regulations and we were trying to do this thing right, I naively took the net metering connection agreement literally. And it turns out that they interpreted it a little differently than I did. So it was more of a net billing situation for those that are familiar with that sort of terminology, where as soon as any power crosses the meter, we're credited 4 cents a kilowatt hour, their avoided cost, as you're aware. And then coming back across, even if it's 5 minutes later, let's say a heat pump kicks on or something, and we get power back across the grid, we're paying them 14 cents. And so, but it should have been, it was my issue. I just didn't understand the regulations appropriately. But what I did then was hook a grid tight system in, and then over time we're still grid tied and probably always will be, but we've made some changes. I don't know, Commissioner Tim, if you would like, I can share a screen. I put a couple of slides. You can see what this array looks like if you like.
Yeah, let's do it.
A couple of minutes. Okay, so let me see if I can present here and see what happens.
We did practice.
Yeah. As he's doing this, I'll just remind folks that in 2019, my fellow commissioners went with me to create a net metering pilot with Georgia Power. We did that. Go ahead, Mike, share your screen whenever you can.
Okay, so I'm going to ask. Oh, here we go.
StreamYard's a little bit different than Zoom and other platforms.
There we go. So now let's see. I guess you can see that now.
Yep, there we go.
Hopefully, okay, good. All right.
Yeah.
So let me. So this.
Wait a second. Are those alpacas or llamas?
Yeah, those are probably. Yeah, that's a llama, and no, those are both alpacas, as a matter of fact. Yeah, so we have a little llama alpaca farm here.
Oh, nice.
But yeah, so this was the site, and due to regulations, it needed to be in a fenced-in area, and then of course through the trees you can barely see the neighbor's house there. But that was one of the stipulations in order for it to, for us to be able to put a ground mounted array. We had to either have a fence that was, concealing that, or else have other barriers so that it was out of sight, essentially. So this was sort of the site. Now here's a photo of the poles that we initially put in, and of course we installed this all ourselves. My neighbor, who's my wife's cousin-in-law, helped me, And then, yeah, so there's the trench. We had to dig a trench then to bring the power to the house. And so I've got just a couple of slides here of the arrays as they're going in. And this was in, I think, August of 2017. And so it was pretty warm. You can see we have an overhead umbrella there just to help us a little bit get out of the sun. Yeah, so then we have 3 arrays, 20 panels each. So there's 60 panels total. It's almost a 20 kilowatt system. So we were aiming to pretty much replace our power with this. And there it is. The arrays are completed. And so, and then of course we had to make the electrical connections. And then immediately it served other purposes. Our llamas and alpacas like it for shade. It works really well. And so these are the inverters that we started out with. These are a couple of SolarEdge 10 kilowatt grid-tied inverters. And then of course, what we ended up finding is that we were, because of that exchange rate, we weren't happy with, how much we were putting out during the day and then, having to purchase back. And so we needed a way to try and conserve more, keep more off the grid. So we needed a smarter sort of inverter. And so we went with this, we added in the Solarc inverter, which is really nice. This is a 12K. The only issue we're having now is that it only allows 63 amp pass through. And so otherwise it'll just kick off everything in the house for a couple minutes until it figures it out and waits to see what else is there. So we're in the process. I've talked to the company. We're probably going to sell this inverter and upgrade. And they've now got a 15 kilowatt that allows 200 amps through. And that would be more than enough to power. And we still have our SolarEdge next to it there, as you can see. And so that's still providing quite a bit of the power. In fact, most of the panels are connected to it. Yeah, but here we can see the difference between that and the old SolarEdge. I'll show you with the mouse here if you can see that. There's the grid, and you can see there's no little arrows going up to that grid. So it's really protecting its. We've also installed some batteries now. And so we have a limited amount of storage, but at least during the day, it can go ahead and send power to our batteries. It can, and then that SolarEdge is back feeding the rest of the house. And these arrows here just represent, this is before we put in the Solarc, and this was when we were grid tied. You can see there's still, this is May to May, and you can see how that was how much the initial how much usage we had, and then we cut it significantly, but we wanted to cut it even more. And so adding in the Solarc and the batteries is doing that. It's hard to do a direct comparison because that was in the first year, of course.
Yeah.
And now it's not apples to apples, but.
Mike, are you then utilizing that energy in the batteries in the evening when the sun goes down? Is that what you're trying to do?
Yeah, the interesting thing is we're pretty much out of power from the batteries by nightfall. But yeah, it's that transition period where we're really not making enough solar and there's still demand, relatively high demand in the household. And so that's when these batteries kick in. So we've got 48 volt. It's kind of a Frankenstein system, as you can see here, but we went with these lithium iron phosphate batteries because, they don't present the fire hazard that the old lithium ion batteries did. But we've got, about 400 amp hours, I guess, there. But we also did some other things to mitigate usage. And here's one of them to the right. It's one of these heat pump water heaters. We took out the old double electric water heaters we had. And what you see at the top there, that black box is a plenum that I built that attaches to the wall. This is out in the garage, actually. So it actually sort of air conditions the garage in the summertime, and in the wintertime, in order for it to have some efficiency as a heat pump, we've got this plenum and we've got a louvered vent in our little spare bathroom that's on the other side of the wall. So we actually can draw warm air and use that for the heat pump water heater.
Mike, you're a genius. I mean, this is. Oh, and you got an electric car. There we go. There.
I knew
there's
you'd be happy
another
to see
battery,
that.
right?
Yeah, we finally took advantage. So now we've got an electric car. it all takes time, right? You know, we're not wealthy people, so but we got into this is what is this, a 2022 Leaf, so it was right before the latest iterations where the prices really went up. So we were
Yes.
very fortunate to get in on that. And so we've got a 220 outlet we installed to run that 6 kilowatt charger for that
Incredible.
car. Yeah, that's fantastic. And so that way we can even utilize more of the power that we produce during the day. So I think that's all I have for you. Here's sort of the overall view.
Yeah, let's bring Michael Perna into the conversation. Drop the slides out. Michael Perna, now I bet you feel like I bet you feel like after seeing that your life is relatively simple.
I got to say, I am impressed, Mike. That is a great job on your part, doing that on your own with some help. That's incredible.
Yeah. You know, Mike Russell, what I just want to commend you for. You took a difficult situation, kind of like the country of Germany. This is what the entire country's done. They've taken something difficult and they've engineered themselves out of it. And that's what you did here. You took a situation where the finances weren't in your favor and you changed some variables, to really make it work for you, adding those batteries, adding that different inverter. It's just fantastic what you've done. I just want to commend you for kind of being a pioneer, in this.
Well, thanks. And it just shows it is possible. It's sort of school of hard knocks for us because I was novice. We went with that Solar Edge system because they use these little optimizers on each panel, and that reduces the power coming out. So they're a lot safer for installers. Of course, the new inverter doesn't use those. But I have a little more experience now, so I was a little more comfortable working around the high voltage coming out. So it's not without risk, obviously. And certainly there, as you know, there were caveats and still are some, but we're working through them, and I couldn't be happier, really. We're not sorry about going solar.
Yeah, that's incredible. I tell people all the time that, the reason Georgia will be 4th in the nation by 2024 in solar is not because we've got a lot of Mike Russells, because there's not that many of them out there. I mean, every county has a brilliant person like Mike, but someone that can figure all this out, they're few and far between. And so we've kind of done solar at a massive utility scale in Middle and South Georgia. And as a result of doing it on thousands of acres at a time, at a cost that's below the avoided cost of energy, which is amazing, we've actually fractionally lowered everybody's rates. And Michael Perna, you have an array that's in that, and there's not that many of these North Georgia arrays. Most of them are Middle and South Georgia. Tell us a little bit about how many acres you have and the difficulty of winning this.
Yeah, so this is an installation of about 1,300 acres. So to give people a sense, it's about 975 football fields. There's going to be about 380,000 modules when it's fully constructed. So that'll give us about 194 megawatts DC. And the output of this will go to Georgia Power. They put out RFPs from time to time, and we were fortunate enough to be successful on this one. This we call it our Timberland Solar Project, is in construction now, and it's first foray for us into the state of Georgia. We've got sites from the Atlantic to the Pacific. Over 4,000 megawatts of solar and battery and wind. And so this will be a nice addition to our portfolio and a nice step into the state of Georgia.
It's a substantial array. And let me ask you, because our rooftop and in Mike Russell's case, the field beside his house, that market has been slower in Georgia, but the market that you're in, the large arrays, is something that our commissioners have really, I guess we've seen the value of scaling it like that. And as a result, when you do things in the kind of scale that you've got, how many acres did you say?
It's about 1,300 acre site.
Yeah, when you do it 1,300 acres at a time, you gain a lot of ground, and that's what we've done in Georgia. How does our large scale solar offerings compare to other places in the country that you've seen?
You know, the unique thing about the United States, you mentioned Germany before, but we have some federal energy policy, but really it's a state by state market, right? Each of the 50 states has different goals, different incentives, different billing structures, different ways of going to market. So the concept of the utility offering up RFPs and striking PPAs is very common around the country. We've participated in that way in other states. You know, there's markets with wholesale markets, like up in the Northeast where our headquarters is, where you have structured wholesale markets, and then you have states similar to Georgia where it's the utility really putting out RFPs and allowing people to compete for that. And then there's some states that are hybrids where the utility builds some of this stuff on their own account and rate bases it, and then also puts out RFPs for a proportion of their renewable portfolio standard goals. So, you know, in one way you say it's a bit, you know, it's a bit fractured because everybody's doing things differently. But, you know, one of the things about the federal way of doing it in the United States is you experiment with different models. And, you know, we're still in the early innings of renewables. We've been in it about 13 years, but, you know, it's still a market in its infancy, really. So, you know, we'll all learn from each other. And over time, you know, one or more markets or one or more systems will probably start to, you know, dominate the market.
Yeah, you know, this really all started for us in 2012. Commissioner McDonald, my colleague, offered what we called then a large scale solar program. It was only 50 megawatts, and it could be two projects, you know, at 50 megawatt that led up to 50 megawatts. So we had one in Social Circle, not too far from where Faith lives, over there in Newton County. That was a 30 megawatt project. It was the very first one that we did, and it launched all of this. So, you know, we started with something small, and then we grew it again in 13, again in 16. We added military bases. We grew it again in 19, and then we just approved another 2,300 megawatts for 2022. So I think we've arrived, Michael, with a paradigm that's worked well for the landowner, for developers like yourself, for the ratepayers, and for the power company. So it's been a quadruple win. And the thing I love about it is the power company doesn't own this stuff. Therefore, there's no opportunity for cost overruns, because if the developer doesn't factor in something, that's on you, right?
That's absolutely right, Commissioner. And I think your approach, as you just laid it out, demonstrates the kind of prudency from government that we use in business. When we got into solar in 2009, we didn't run out and build a 200 megawatt, you know, site the first time out of the box. We started with 100 kW sites, and then we went to a megawatt. Then we went to 10 and 20 megawatts, and then we did 100. So you learn, right? Each step of the way you learn. You want to make your big mistakes on the little projects, not on the big projects. So the approach you took in the state of Georgia very much mirrors a business approach to how you step into a new technology like this.
Yeah. So, Dink, I'm going to bring you in. You've just heard the two approaches. I mean, I'm willing to bet, Dink, you probably haven't heard this kind of detail on either of these. But you've heard the personal way to do it with Mike Russell, and all that he's had to do, in engineering personally to make it work. And then you've heard the program that we've done, this kind of utility scale that's enabled Georgia to really be a player nationwide in this. What do you think, Dink, about these two approaches that we've taken here?
Will Rogers said we're all ignorant, just in different subjects. This would be one subject I'm pretty ignorant about. I will let you know that we live on a farm in Oglethorpe County, and my across the road Georgia Tech graduate helped install a small solar system for our mule barn, which is 1,500 feet from the nearest power pole. So I'm a neophyte in this, but my goal one day at our River Swamp place is to go off the grid. I'm going to have these guys come help me figure it out.
I tell you, Mike Russell could be a consultant in this. I mean, he's done so much. I need to, Faith. We need to have his name on a Post-it note on your monitor, so that when a customer has an issue on solar, Mike can go out there and analyze it, because he can figure out how to do it. Dink, when I think about making our state a better place, I think about let's just use the spirit of the Super Bowl coming up here, offense and defense. So I'm a big Patrick Mahomes, Kansas City Chief guy on the offense. What these guys are doing is kind of offense. They are adding green energy. They're helping our grid use less coal and less everything by adding this. But what you're doing in a lot of your preservation efforts, conservancy efforts, is defense. You're trying to make sure that, like take Jessup and your purchase of the land down there on the Altamaha River, you want to keep it pristine. Is that an accurate way of kind of describing kind of the approach that you're in your life right now?
Absolutely. We have 8 grandchildren, and I want their grandchildren to see those centuries-old cypress standing in a pristine way in our swamp. We were challenged with the possibility of becoming the largest coal ash dump in America by bringing in 10,000 tons a day, and that's where I've put a lot of my energy since 2016. In my our Jessup newspaper, I think I've written 121 columns on why we can't put those toxic materials into our groundwater and our streams. That's right. So I'm happy to see solar coming. And one day I hope to be involved, but I need to spend some time with Michael, to learn more about it. Because again, I'm ignorant on all of the technicalities of that.
Dink, I think it would be great for your newspaper, the nonprofit newspaper that you are helping to run there. I think it would be great for y'all to go out and do a story on Mike Russell.
I've already written it down. I've made notes to talk with our editor later today. But I think Mike Russell needs to do a YouTube so people can click on it and hear his story.
Yeah. I'm going to bring Mike Russell back in here. Mike, have you done a YouTube on this?
No, so the interesting thing is I've been working, we did all this while I was working full time at the partnership. So that was a pretty heavy load, but my wife finally talked me into retiring last March. And so now we've been making that transition. So yeah, that's part of the goals, is to do some of that kind of thing. Certainly that's how I learned how to do that, is watching guys on YouTube and then talking to the company reps, and et cetera.
Wow.
And then the most important thing for someone, in my mind, trying to do it yourself and learning the hard way, is you don't want to kill yourself either, because there's some risk involved. And so there's a local electrician here, Lamar Chandler, lives over by you, Dink, that I had bring in. Of course, he's an old Navy guy, and he's like, okay, he looked it over, and of course our county and rail has great people that work out on the lines. Our linemen, our meter readers, the inspector Tim Shelna, all these folks do a really great job and helped us along the way. And Lamar wanted to know if this was going to pass the smoke test. Which I don't know if you know about that, but he said that was what they used in the Navy. If it didn't smoke, it's probably going to be okay. I was like, well, I'm glad you're hooking it up, but let's see what happens. And sure enough, I think he was a little surprised at that time that it actually fired up and worked. But that's a far cry from what Michael's doing with the huge arrays. I'd love to see that sometime. But yeah, I'm planning to do some of that. In fact, I'm already helping some friends out here locally that we're part of a solar issue, and so we're doing what we can.
Great. Well, Dink, how can folks find out about your newspaper? I know, Faith, we need to make a contribution to this nonprofit out there. Dink, y'all take contributions, right?
Well, we do. The Oglethorpe Echo is 150 years old. And a year and a half ago, it was going to close because the owner turned 70, had a stroke. His small staff was ready to retire. And I came to see him and he said, well, I said, Ralph, you can't do this. Because he said, why? I said, because your parents are watching from heaven, and this paper's been in your family since the 40s between aunts and others. And he said, well, what are you going to do? Buy it? I said, no, I'm retired. If I'd kept all the newspapers I've ever owned, we'd have about 60. I don't need another newspaper, but I don't want to live in a community that doesn't have a newspaper. Well, what are you going to do? Well, in this same spot that I'm sitting today, I said, we're going to form a nonprofit and I'll run it. Will you donate your newspaper to the nonprofit? He said he would. He said, what you going to do then? I said, the devil's in the details. Just a minute. I called the dean of the journalism school at Georgia and said, Charles, I got an idea. What? We're going to turn the Echo into a real life laboratory for your journalism students. I want them to be the editorial reporting staff. He said, I like it. I said, the devil's in the details. And since November 4, 2021, that's what we've been doing, and it's thriving. And we've added all the digital platforms, every possible smorgasbord item these students have been able to help us do. So it's gotten a lot of national coverage and speaking and across the country through the Zooms and platforms like this morning. So we've covered solar some. Here we have, and so it's working. It's working.
Love it. Well, we've got the website scrolling at the bottom for the newspaper.
Okay, great. Well, good. We're going to make a contribution. Count on that. And I've got a grandson that's right through that door that's ready to go. So I'm going to say, Dink, thanks for all that you've done throughout our state. And we've had you on the radio multiple times. So appreciate you.
Well, thank you, Tim. And you tell them that your grandparents are from my hometown.
Okay.
We grew up in a pew, just a few pews away from them at the First Baptist Church in Jessup.
Yeah, that's right. My grandfather, Lester Tumblin, taught Sunday school at First Baptist Jessup. My grandmother, who I called Grandmama, she was right there. And I spent summers in Jessup, going hunting and fishing, not hunting in the summer, but mostly fishing in the summer and hunting in the winter. Over Christmas and holidays with my granddad. So I am grateful for his godly influence in my life. He was a fine man.
He was, and my parents and your grandparents are in heaven enjoying coffee probably right now.
Well, Michael Perna, I got to get out and see this site, right? So I haven't been out there, so I need to come out.
That would be great. Love to have you.
And Mike Russell, I've got to come to your house.
Anytime.
And see this. Well, look, everybody, thank you so much. Faith, where are we going next? Do we know where we'll be with Community Focus in the future? You got another town for me?
Yeah, sorry, my internet is a little unstable. But we're going to take a little bit of a break from Community Focus while we focus on the Energy Matters Awards that are coming up. And so we'll be back in probably a couple of months with some more community focus shows.
Okay. Sounds good. Everybody have a wonderful Thursday and a great weekend. Take care, everybody.
Thanks, everybody.
God bless.